So, Pokemon Legends ZA is finally out, and at the time of recording this, I'm about halfway through the game, currently clocking in at about 11 hours, which How Long to Beat says the game takes 23 hours to beat the main story, so yeah, I'll call that half. Currently where I'm at in the game, it doesn't seem like the gameplay loop is going to change significantly, so I feel like even though this is more of a first impressions, my opinions are pretty much consistent with what the entire game is like. Now, I guess as a little spoiler warning for the video, I will say that my opinions on the game are leaning in the negative side. But if you've listened to any review, seen any video on this game, looked on Twitter or any social media site, you'll see everybody's opinion is pretty much the same. At least as far as their overall feelings of the game. This one's not really good. Which is unfortunate because I've been a big Pokemon fan ever since I was around 8 years old. My first game I ever played in the series being Pokemon Colosseum on the GameCube, which is definitely a weird starting point for the series, but that's where I started. And it's a bit ironic that the 3D Pokemon games, the first real 3D Pokemon adventure games that came out, the Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness on the GameCube, are significantly better than the 3D Pokemon games that have been coming out on the Nintendo Switch systems. This isn't going to be a particularly in-depth review, especially considering that I haven't beaten the game, but this will be my general thoughts on the pros and the cons of the game. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Starting out with a few of the positives of the game, I do really like the music in this game. Some of it are remixes of tracks from previous Pokemon games, and some of it I think are new tracks composed for this game. And yeah, the overall compositions and sound design are really good, but saying a Pokemon game has good music, I mean, that's kind of a given. Pokemon's one of those franchises like Sonic where even the worst games will have some absolute banger tracks. I do also prefer the art direction of the Legends games to the mainline Pokemon games that have been coming out. I wasn't really a big fan of the art direction in Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet. I don't know, I think the character designs look kind of weird, kind of off-putting. And at least in Legends Arceus and now Legends ZA, the character designs are a bit more traditionally Pokemon. Another, I guess, somewhat positive that I'll give the game is that Game Freak did try something new with the combat system. Instead of the traditional turn-based Pokemon battles, you instead have a pseudo-real-time battle system with 4 moves mapped to your face buttons of the controller, and they have cooldowns. If you've played Xenoblade 2, it's extremely similar to Xenoblade 2, except instead of the blades from Xenoblade 2, you're using Pokemon. As a die-hard Xenoblade fan, you'd think I would be head over heels for this system, but I'm not particularly in love with it. For me, the appeal of Pokemon has always been that it's a turn-based RPG, and considering that more and more traditionally turn-based RPG franchises are turning their back on that system and switching to more real-time combat systems, it's a bit of a shame to see Pokemon joining the ranks of that. But that being said, credit where credit's due, Game Freak did design something new for the Pokemon series for this. And that's pretty much it for the positives, really. So with that out of the way, let's get on to the negatives. Starting out with a pretty obvious one, the story. The story in the Pokemon games have never really been much to write home about, besides, again, I think Colosseum and XD were pretty good when it came to the story. They at least had a decent hook to them. And I remember Black and White had a pretty good story as well. But in this one, it's pretty much just nothing. Your character shows up in Lumio City, and suddenly you're swept away to a hotel. You meet a group of people who are, I guess, all part of this same club that you're, I guess, forced into joining. I mean, you don't really have any reason or any motivation to join this, but your, I guess, sort of friendly rival drags you into it, and now you're part of this team. I guess your real motivation is to climb through the ranks of your Z through A tournament, but again, why? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. There's other plot points as the game goes on, with stuff ranging from Zygarde to Rogue Mega Evolutions, but does it really matter? Do you really care? I know I really don't. Another black mark on this game, and again, I'm far from the first person to bring this up, but the visuals are just atrocious. Now, I know I said earlier I liked a lot of the character designs, and I'm not talking about the character designs, I'm talking about the environment. It doesn't help that you're locked into one city for the entirety of the game. You don't get to explore the rest of Kalos. You're only in Lumiose City. So you're in one city the whole game, surrounded by copy-pasted buildings, which are essentially flat cardboard structures with low-resolution textures plastered all over them. They couldn't even bother to model any of the windows or anything on it. No, it's just a texture on a flat surface. While I understand this was likely done to accommodate performance for the Nintendo Switch, and I did play the Nintendo Switch 1 version of the game, I did not get the Switch 2 version. However, even from what I've seen, the Switch 2 version has these same low-resolution textures plastered on all the buildings, albeit at a slightly higher resolution. But you'd think that for the Switch 2 version, they could have at least, I don't know, maybe modeled it and that's included on the upgrade, but no. You have the same low-res textures, even if you paid $70 for the Switch 2 version. Now, I didn't have any particular issues with actual performance. The game runs at a pretty solid 30 frames per second, barring a few slowdowns and some more intense visual moments. But what is really distracting is the pop-in when things load in the distance. And when I say distance, I mean about 10, 20 feet away from you. The pop-in is extremely noticeable with the Switch version. I just figured, oh, well, it's the Switch version. Of course it has terrible pop-in. But looking at other people's footage of the Switch 2 version, I did see the pop-in is there. Things pop in a little further away, but things still pop in, and it just looks bad. The map is also extremely small. Like I said, you're only in Lumiose City. You don't get to leave and explore any other part of Kalos, which was a huge disappointment. Now, if you've played X and Y, you know those were pretty small games, even on their own, and there was a lot of stuff that was left relatively unexplored. Think back to the power plants out in the desert. We still have no idea what that was all about, whether that was cut content from a hypothetical Z or something that was supposed to be a DLC update. We will never know, and this game certainly doesn't do anything for that. This game also has an incredibly small lineup of Pokemon available to capture. There's only 230 Pokemon in the Lumiose Pokédex. That includes 3 whole sets of starter Pokemon and their full evolutionary lines, a total of 27 Pokemon, and Eevee and its 8 various evolutions. So what this ends up resulting in is seeing the same Pokemon everywhere you go throughout the entire game. Pretty much every wild area has the same Pokemon available to capture. There are some variations, but again, for the most part, you're going to be seeing a lot of the same Pokemon from beginning to end. I mean, again, going back to X and Y, a game that a lot of people said was rather small in scope, had 457 Pokemon that were available in the game. And that doesn't even include the national decks, where you could transfer your Pokemon from previous generations into your Generation 6 save file. Now, I'd suspect, and I haven't looked into any data mines or leaks on this, but they probably have a large number of Pokemon that they withheld from the base game that they're saving for the upcoming $30 DLC expansion. Again, I don't have any proof of this, but I would bet money that there's a ton of Pokemon in the code for the game that are already in there that they withheld from the base game to sell them back to you. And that's ultimately why I feel extremely sour on this game. Game Freak has nickeled and dimed us as players for a subpar experience. And of course, the most diehard fans of Pokemon will gladly lap up whatever slop Game Freak serves them at whatever price Game Freak is willing to sell it for. So with that said, please do not buy this game. Don't support Game Freak and these shady business practices. They do not deserve your money. They don't even deserve your time. It's become abundantly clear but they don't care about releasing a quality product for their diehard fans. They know that people will buy these games by the millions, no matter how bad they are, no matter how limited in scope they are, no matter how much they nickel and dime you. And with the negative pushback I've seen on this game, maybe this will be the one that turns the tides. But I don't think so. Game Freak's gonna keep doing what they do, and all we can really do is spread awareness of it and tell people, hey, maybe this one's not worth your time and money. But with that being said, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Mega Rock'n'Rolla. Keep rockin'.